Welcome to Roof It Up. This is a podcast about innovators, entrepreneurs, business leaders, and their stories about the course they took by Science Global.
Awesome. Okay. Hi, everyone. We have Nick with Notorious Roofing here with us today. He is one of the best up and coming roofers that we have. He is working almost from West Coast to East Coast, and he's kicking butt. So thank you for joining us today, Nick.
Thanks for having me.
Super excited to have Nick here with us. We would love to know your story. You originally didn't start off as a roof, owning your own roofing company. So we'd love to know a little bit about your story, how it started, like where you come from, and how your mindset really has championed you forward to be where you are today and where you're going and propelling forward.
Yeah, I almost essentially have two different stories. I have the story of my childhood, what led me all the way to roofing, and then I've been in roofing for 12 years, and that alone has its own story, right? It's had its ups and downs and trials and tribulations just in that. And so a basic summary of my first story, that my growing up, is I guess I had a real adverse living conditions growing up. Father was a drug dealer. We went on the run. My mom ended up passing when I was 8 years old. It was a suspected homicide. The accused was never really convicted due to lack of evidence. I ended up in a foster program until I was like 15. I moved out at 15 years old, didn't get a high school diploma, ended up working construction as a default, and kind of made some poor choices that wound me up in almost some legal trouble in my younger 20s, and had a good friend who just purchased a roofing company from our hometown pastor. And he was one of my best friends growing up since I was like 11 years old. And he just said, hey man, he was real religious. And he said, I got this company. You're one of the hardest workers I ever met. I really need somebody. I'll pay you. I don't care what your background is. I love you to death. I know you. I know you'll stand by me and you'll do the job. I said, I don't know anything about roofing. And he said, well, I'm turning it commercial. And so we're going to learn it together. And so that was really my introduction to roofing, right? I joined this small residential company that, when we first started, we were an office the size of my home office here. And when in 2017, we had multiple locations across the country. We had won several awards in commercial roofing. We installed like 900 Chick-fil-A's by that point across the nation. Yeah, and across in like 6-7 years. And so
that's really incredible.
Yeah, we really just like took the world by storm. And honestly, he was one of my first mentors as I was learning to clean up my act. This guy, Jason Hatt, he was the owner of Presidential Roofing. It's the first roofing company I joined, based out of Denver, Colorado. He's probably one of the best salesmen I ever met. And he was a real close friend. And so he always gave me a lot of criticism. And I learned to take that criticism. I think one of the first lessons he actually taught me was every time he criticized me, I'd get so upset and pissed off. You grow up in this tough upbringing, you love this rough, tough, everything pisses you off, right? And so it's like, he sat me down one day and was like, hey man, the first thing that I want you to know that changed my life is that I had to take criticism and learn about constructive criticism, like learn how to take that and use that and not get so pissed off about it and not attach your feelings to it, but say, all right, I did this. How am I going to change this so I don't do that again? Right?
That's good. That's super powerful.
That was like the first thing he ever taught me. And really from there, I watched a lot of things. And as he just, lifted us up and just kept selling, he constantly pushed me. He put me into these positions where it was like, man, it was like, we got a Chick-fil-A in the town and we were jumping up and down. It was like, oh my God. It's like when I first got into roofing, I spent a lot of time on YouTube. We didn't know what we were doing. We were watching YouTube videos. It'd be 11 o'clock at night. I'd have the whole roof lit up. The very first commercial roof we ever did was a dispensary. And so a medical marijuana dispensary back
Mhm.
in Boulder, Colorado. It probably took us 4.5 months to do it. And I'm telling you, if we were on it nowadays, if you took me back to that roof, I'd be in and out in a few days, 3 or 4 days. It's
Yeah.
crazy. So we were probably there for 6.5, 7 months on that.
Wow.
And I was there every night YouTubing, trying to figure out. We made a ton of mistakes, caused a lot of leaks along the way, but we kept selling, we kept learning what to do. And he just pushed me so hard. And so it was like, we get one Chick-fil-A, and then the next thing you know, we've got 3. Now we've got the whole city of Denver. Actually, our first day on the very first job that we went to, they warned us, we had a whole list of rules that we had to abide by. You can't, be seen. You can't work from these hours to the hours. You can't run lifts during these hours because the parking lot might be being used. You have to always loading materials at night or on Sundays. And just we could work during the day, but no music, no cussing, no smoking, no tobacco use, no chewing. It didn't matter. No tobacco at all. And the first Chick-fil-A we were on, they actually let go on a group of cleaners. They cleaned like grease traps for Chick-fil-A. We came in on a Sunday, and it was just 2 guys talking amongst each other, boys being boys, talking about partying, talking about girls, using foul language, just doing whatever. They didn't do anything real bad, but Chick-fil-A listened to the audio. And they dropped a multi-million-dollar contract.
Wow.
Because of because of how these guys, were acting on a Sunday by themselves, and just the kind of language they used, and so we were scared to death working with them. And so we tried real hard to, just do whatever they said so we can maintain it. And we had it for, a good 4 or 5, probably 6 years by the time we were, by the time I stepped away from it. And I think Presidential stepped away as well. And so, but yeah. And so he pushed me in a sense as like, he would open up a market and like, oh, dude, they just gave me all the ones in Texas and I'm going to do it. 360 Chick-fil-A's, Texas, let's go. And I'm like, what?
Awesome.
How am I supposed to do that? And he's like, well, if you can't do it, I'm going to hire a project manager. Instead of being, you're going to hire a project manager. He's like, well, I'll have to find a boss, somebody who can do what you can't. And he's like, you don't take offense to it. And I did. And it sucked because, as he progressed, I progressed, right? So he sells one Chick-fil-A. I get a group of my friends together. We're all building the Chick-fil-A. We do it. And I keep one crew busy. Then I build a second crew, and then I'm kind of managing 2 groups of my friends. And it's like, yada, yada, yada. By the 3rd crew I'm on, it's like I have a run out of friends. I'm piecing things together, looking for people all over the place. And then I had to start exploring the options of sub crews. And so I started learning how to find sub crews, ask the right questions, do all these things. And so when he started moving into these other markets, it was really difficult back then. You couldn't just, post something on Facebook and everyone would be like, yeah, I want to do this job, right? And so it was like, he would fly me out to Texas and it would be like, all right, Nick, if you don't find the crews and figure out how to get licensed here, I'm going to have to hire somebody who does. And it's like my best friend. I don't want to let him down. I don't want to, I'm making good money. I just turned my life around. I felt like I don't want to go back to how I was brought up or anything like this. And it's like I was always in this fight or flight mode because of what he was doing. And so like, as I would show up in San Antonio or these different markets, and I would start looking for laborers, and every time I would post these Craigslist ads, that was the biggest way, right? And you get these and they were junk. They didn't show up on time. They had missing tools. They didn't obey the safety rules.
So with all of that, how does that improve your mindset to where you are today? Like working with your friends, working with a mentor, working with crazy Chick-fil-A, which we love Chick-fil-A. So how has that improved and changed and developed your mindset over all these years?
I guess I've had quite a few takeaways from the roofing industry and just life in general, and the things. And I think the most important one that I have is the trust in myself and most of all, that's like the biggest probably thing that I learned over the years in the roofing industry. Now I've learned a lot in the roofing industry. When I would show up in these markets and I would, post these Craigslist ads and they wouldn't work out, I would think to myself, how do I find guys then? So I'd be like, well, I always complain about my boots smelling like the dump.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I was like, you know what? I say that I live at the dump. I bet a lot of other roofers feel that way too. So I'd show up at these dumps 4 a.m. I'd start looking for who was dumping what. And I saw roofing materials being dumped. This guy's a working man. I know this guy's running a crew. He's trying to get this dumped so he can go to work before
Mhm.
I hand out my card, right? And so I really
Wow.
started to think out the box on recruiting. Started to think about like the things that I complain about. Where
Incredible.
will I
Yeah.
find me, right? If I was doing what they were doing, and that's where I would know to go look for.
Wow.
So,
Super creative. Like you
Wow.
totally thought
Yeah.
outside the box. You were like, I'm obviously not using Craigslist. I'm not getting who I need. And then I love how you were like, you got creative and you know, your boots
Mhm.
like smelling like a dump was
Mhm.
like it like lighted something up. So that's pretty amazing. That just kind of shows again. I think, you know, obviously what I love about your story, Nick, is that some people could say they have the same story. Like I come from a really broken family. And so that's why I'm so broken. And they have this, like, it's easy to have this excuse in life, like, right? But I feel like you have not become what is so easy for us to do, all of us, right? Myself included, for us to become victims of our story.
Yep.
Right? It's almost
Absolutely.
like I'm hearing you and you're like, you've become a hero in the
Mhm.
story, right? And so you haven't let the past, like we can't change our past, but we can change our future. And that's literally like the anthem that your whole life seems to be singing,
Mhm.
right? I can't change my past. I can't change what's happened to me, but what I can do is I can change my future. And so that is very, like how you got creative. That was exceptional. Like that was brilliant. I don't know,
Mhm.
incredible. And like right now, so your business, obviously your story, right? Like you went from there, you got these ideas, and then what led you to go, okay, it's time for me to start my own company? Because I know your company is pretty new. It's like under 2 years old, but you're already crushing it. So
Mhm.
what came to you that you're like, I just need to go ahead and start my own company?
so in over the years, um, with presidential roofing, you know, we started winning all these awards with the material manufacturers and these things. And um, my my friend who had started the or who had acquired the roofing company from our pastor, um, had let the money and the fast-paced lifestyle of roofing kind of get to it. I think what a lot of people don't see behind the scenes is that the roofing historically is filled with a bunch of guys who are making millions of dollars who may not deserve to be making millions of dollars.
Mm,
Um, there's a lot of there historically had been a lot of drugs and alcohol in the roofing industry. It's why a lot of people find themselves in here. No drug test, it's weekly pay, it's things like that. It's a fly-by-night industry, and a lot of those guys that end up in the industry have have damaged the industry. I know you. It seems like I'm a hero to you, but at the same time, like I have fallen victim. So when my first partnership ended with Presidential Roofing in 2017 because our moral values just didn't align. I ended up with, you know, my savings, no stake in the business, no stake in anything that I went because I learned my first real hard lesson. Don't make handshake deals with your friends.
Mhm.
It's something that a lot of people say they would never do, but I guarantee that I run across probably more than you would believe of people who don't have proper sales agreements between their owners and their friend, or you know, their owners and their salesmen, or their anyone, you know what I mean? And so the people just aren't doing that. And so making handshake agreements, it's like I ended up with nothing. And I watched my friend, you know, walk away with the business, the source of income, the cash flow, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
just, and I felt like he didn't love it as much as I did. And I ended up so sad. And I ended up learning one of the hardest lessons I probably have ever learned. And I learned a lot about grief. And
Mhm.
so up until then, you know, even with my childhood and the way it had been, I had always associated grief with death. And
Mhm.
not with like the loss of a business or the
Mhm.
loss of a girlfriend or
Mhm.
and so I struggled really hard with depression and some honestly some drugs and alcohol issues that I never had my entire life with all the stuff
Mhm.
I've been through.
Yeah.
It really like all of a sudden it just came crashing down uh, once I lost this first business that I had built with my friend. And so um, it took me a minute, and it took some really, really good friends, some really close loved ones that came together and pulled me out of it. You know, I couldn't say, I could shout out, you know, there's a few names. My sister Stacy would be one of them. My friend Mackenzie Gross would be one of them. Reed Hollinsby and Rose Maston. Those would be probably the four. Forever grateful for their friendships. They pulled me out of it. I just love them to death, you know? And so I learned a lot about grief. And once that all kind of blew over and I realized, hey, you got to get yourself out of this, you know? Because at that point, it was like, I think a lot of people, they get to the top, and when they fall, that's it. You know what I mean? Like, you don't see a lot of people, you know, trying to go back after their title. They're one-hit wonders, or they're whatever this stuff. And so it's like, I didn't want to be another one-hit wonder. I didn't want to leave the industry. It's the only thing I ever really knew. The only way I ever knew how to make money is, and as embarrassing as it felt to be coming back into the industry, not, you know, the chief of operations for Presidential Roofing, but it's just some dude who was just living on his couch because he just had to get sober. You know what I mean? It kind of humbled me and let me just kind of to restart and rebuild myself. And so I spent the next few years trying to live with intent, trying to do everything that I did with intent. And so took, I only dated with, like, I'm talking everything I did was with intent. So I was like, the next girl that I date, I'm gonna make sure that, like, I'm picking carefully, like and make sure that dating is dating, and like that exclusive is exclusive, that I'm being very intentional about everything. And because I did that, I found my wife for the next girl that I dated. Right? So it's
awesome.
Like, and so I put the same kind of principles to everything that I was doing, my health, my career. And so I started consulting with a solar company. They reached out to me and asked me to help them build a roofing department for them. So it was something that you know, moved me across the country, and I spent years and years on the road. So that didn't bother me. I felt like I needed to kind of get away from Denver, as I was kind of still trying to mourn the loss of my business, or just finally dealing with those feelings. I felt it would be good for the fresh start. And as I was finally starting to heal from that, and I decided to make the big move, and I moved to the South. I'd lived there once before, so I was familiar with it.
Gotta love the South. Gotta love it.
Yeah, I love the South. And so I love the people there. It's awesome. It's so green. And so, I went down there, and they were like, Nick, here's the deal. Solar is huge. And the people are making so much money. And I didn't really understand what solar was at the time, or how huge it was. And I hear people chirping, but you're like, whatever, right? And so it's like, in most roofers, they see solar, we're like, we're not going to work with it. You're really hard to work with. Electricians, that sounds like crap. It's definitely going to leak because of you, right? Like, I'm not doing that. And so they said, Nick, we just want you to develop the most flawless system. We want you to develop a system that's so flawless that takes us from point A to point Z, so we can hand this off and get this. And so I was like, cool. I go in there thinking I'm going to train all these solar guys to sell roofs, and we're going to have this thing. And so everything that I did that was along those lines was like, no, we don't want to learn that. We're trying to learn solar. We don't have time to learn this. Like, we're like, it was just no. Yeah. Like, from the owners, like, hey, they don't have time for this. Like, it's too much. You need a different system. And so the system really quickly ended up becoming, I'm just going to get them a number, and I'm going to give it to them as fast as I possibly can, and just let them do it, because they're pissing me off and I don't know what else to do. And really quickly, I started to see, every time I did that, these guys were making sales. And it was like, well, what's going on here? Well, why is that the answer to things? Like, how is that working better than anything else? And so I realized, like, that's all I need to do for these guys. And then I started kind of deep diving into what some of their problems were, and how I can maybe solve some of them, understand what the solar industry needs in a roofer, and the mistakes that are made, and just how they need the proposals made and given to them and sent back to them. And so and so that was my first real brush with solar. And so I stayed with them. And then during the pandemic, a few months before the pandemic, I was living down in the Southeast. They asked me and my wife, to move to Chicago, Illinois. It was their largest market at the time. And so a couple months before the pandemic hits, I wind up in Chicago. I'm there for like 2 months, and then the whole state shuts down. And then they do something funny and they say, hey, if you're a door knocker, which everyone in solar is, you can't knock. You can't knock for solar. All solar salesmen not allowed to knock. We think we don't know what's going on with this, COVID stuff. It's just safest if everybody doesn't knock on doors.
Right.
And so really quickly, the solar company that I had worked for was stuck in this bind. They were pulling all their solar salesmen out, moving them to states that they were functioning in. And really quickly, I found myself alone in a state, and they were like, hey, we're probably going to have to scrap the roofing department. And once again, I find myself in a fight or flight situation.
Yeah.
And so I asked them for a list of their customers. And they said, a list of our customers. I said, yeah, give me a list of your customers. So me and my friend, my really good friend in roofing, Tony Martin, take this list of customers. Shout out to Tony Martin at PRQ. Love that
Yes,
guy.
We do love Tony and PRQ.
Yeah.
Great guys.
Very true.
One of the best guys I know. My favorite salesman of all time. So me and him, what we did is we take this list of customers, we plug it into Hail Trace, and we say, all right, look at this. Next time a storm hits, we're going to be ready. We're not going to let them scrap that. A few days later, my birthday happens to be my birthday, April 7th. Best birthday present I could ever get. A hailstorm hits the north side of Chicago, and me and Tony go to town just selling solar systems. Now, mind you, you're not allowed to knock for solar at this time, but we start showing up at all these people's houses. You're not allowed to knock for roofing really either. But what we did is we showed up to all of our customers' houses as solar people looking to inspect our solar systems that were on these people's roofs.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so we show up, knock, knock, knock. Hey, I'm Nick Salazar. It looks like a hailstorm just came through here. It's damaged quite a few systems around here. Looks like I'm gonna have to hop up there and inspect this system. And so I'd go up there, I'd inspect the system. Rarely were the systems even remotely damaged, but the roofs always were. And so in that time period, I would hop off the roof. I'd come down and tell them the solar system's fine, but your roof is messed up, right? And so the roof being messed up, I think I'm going to be able to help you out. We'll detach this solar system, we'll redo the roof, and I'll do it for insurance proceeds. And so in the blink of an eye, in just a few days, thinking that, we're going to be canceled and this roofing department is going to be scrapped, we figure out how we're going to keep this roofing department alive. And we sell a couple $1 million worth of roofing in a pandemic while everybody else is sitting at home on their butts. Right?
Yeah, I remember that was a weird time as a homeowner because people would complain like, oh, this roofing company or pest control company is bothering us and they're being horrible. But as soon as you put their needs first, like, let me inspect your solar system, they're automatically like, yes, please look at it. It's an investment and want to make sure that it's still operable. So that's a really cool idea. I'm glad y'all did that.
Yeah. To them, it was just, it didn't look like, hey, these guys are here to sell me something. These guys are here providing great customer service for the solar, right? Oh my gosh, they showed up here just to check on the solar system to make sure that our solar system and our roof was okay, even in the middle of a pandemic. Knowing that all this stuff happens, they're putting themselves into dangerous way to provide good customer service. And that's the way that they kind of saw it. That was how I got myself through the pandemic. And so what happens, I'm still working for this company. We keep the roofing department alive. We get through the pandemic. And as soon as the pandemic kind of lifts up, Titan Solar, the largest solar company in the nation, decided they were moving into some markets. And they decided the way that they were going to do so was by purchasing the solar company that I was working for. That solar company gets purchased by the largest roofing company or solar company in the nation, but they scrapped the roofing department because they don't do solar, right?
Yeah.
I had an opportunity, I had quite a few offers on the table to come work for different people in different areas. But thinking back and looking about what I had been doing over the years, and knowing that my job, all it's ever been is, hey, Nick, can you get this built? And my motto is always anytime, anywhere, right? Just knowing that, and that's how I function, and knowing that I don't need to learn to sell things, and that there's other people that will do it for me. I really figured out, I think I've got an idea for a really scalable business.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I put things together. I leveraged my relationships with a lot of the solar companies that I had been working for. A lot of people who were my former employee or former coworkers ended up, now Titan employees. And so they were my backdoor ins to getting linked up with Titan. And so they put me in front of all the right people, and I just had to prove myself to the right people. And so I spent the last, 14 months since I went out on my own, really trying to prove myself to these solar companies. And as you guys would know, I think can attest to this, I think I'm doing a pretty good job at proving myself to these guys that I can handle their needs, roofing needs.
Awesome. Very cool. So Nick, one question I have for you, because literally you are just like you're under year 2. So I cannot wait till we, hopefully have another podcast with you like in 2 years. And you're like, oh yeah, like I'm like, I'm super excited. Like I can totally see you on tons of platforms, speaking within the roofing community. And so we really see an incredible future ahead for you. And so we literally are excited that you're here. So one question that we have for you, just to like wrap this up, but if whoever is listening to this, if you had one thing to tell them about, let's say, I love how you were kind of talking about struggling through grief, right? And grief can be like the loss. And I love how you put that, like the loss of a business, right? That's a real grief. Like it is, that's like really deep pain, hurt, like it's a lot of emotion. And so for a listener in here that's maybe dealing with some grief, like maybe they just, again, a partnership just broke up, or they just tried something and it failed. What one thing would you tell them to help them shift their mindset from, yes, we got to go through the grief, but there is hope ahead? Like, what would you tell them? And then we'll wrap it up.
Well, I don't know. I think I come from a different level. I mean, the lessons that I've learned, I think most importantly in my life is, to love and trust myself over everything. I learned the importance of grieving and not to just associate it with death, but take the time to grieve appropriately for whatever it is that you may be grieving. Taking constructive criticism and learning how to use it. But I've had to learn to like tone it down and just, channel that anger and that rage into doing something, right? Just get down and do this, and this will keep you from going out there and trying to tear someone's head, get yourself into trouble or whatever.
Absolutely.
Right. And so another thing that is, because of the way that I grew up, so adversely with all the different losses and the moving around, as a kid, you can't take care of yourself without the help of others. It's just not possible. So I really learned how to ask for help when I need it appropriately, right? If I can't do something or I need help with someone, reach out to someone who might be able to do it. And don't wait on it till you get yourself into a position where you're like, where you had to ask for help because that's like your last resort. Asking for help before it's your last resort, I think, is something that I really learned to do along the way over the years as well. And so, and not writing handshake deals, if you're
listening to this, and you're like, no, this would never happen, that's never going to happen to me. Listen to Nick. He's literally like and so many people as well, like make sure there's a contract, right? Like, because that's really for the health and safety of both parties. It's almost like we love each other so much, we're going to have a contract, right? For the sake of both. So that's really good. And then also, I kind of love how you said, if you are going through grief, which is obviously you have to go through it, through that process of healing, don't do it alone. Don't ask for help at the last resort, like ask for it before. And I love how you said also, you're speaking how it takes humbling yourself to do that. So really cool, Nick. Yeah. So Nick, thanks for being on our podcast. We really appreciate it.